the fastest, easiest way to buy Bitcoin. If you're just getting into crypto, it's the perfect place to start. Guys, welcome back to my show. As always, it is powered by Icon Plus Capital. So quick news announcement for you before we jump in, because today's one is different. I feel like they're all different, so this is going to be fun. So Icon's DeFi product, Balance DAO, launched last month with over $180 million in total locked in value. More DeFi products are coming in May, fiat on and off ramps, bridge, and open money market on finance. So some always more updates coming from Icon there. Now, this is sponsored by BlockFi, so going to give them a quick shout out. You can get up to $250 when you sign up, which is pretty cool. And you can get up to 8.6% interest on your USDC. That's also pretty great given everything's kind of like negative interest at the moment, particularly across Europe. So that's really good news there. This is also live on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit the follow button, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, so you never miss any of my guests. So today's guest is Maren Altman, the beautiful woman using the stars to trade the crypto markets. This is pretty insane. Maren, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing today?
I'm good. So
Cool.
Where are you at the moment? It looks stunning.
I'm on my hotel balcony in Dubai, and if everything could be shown, I am right in front of the marina. The sun is setting. It's beautiful. So here visiting probably for the final time before it gets too hot before I apply for a residence. So quick trip here.
That's amazing. Where are you from initially?
I am from New York, born and raised in Texas, but live in New York. And that's where I might be splitting my time up with here in Dubai in the future.
Just kind of avoiding those COVID restrictions, Texas, Dubai. I love it.
Yeah.
But I've seen a lot of your work. It kind of popped up in the end of 2020, the beginning of 2021. So I have so many questions for you because it's so different from anything that I've seen before. You know, people are always looking at the fundamentals. People are always looking at technical analysis. And obviously, I'm sure you take those things into account as well. But you look at astrology. So you could really explain it better than I can. How would you define what you do?
Yeah, I look at planetary cycles and the positions of planetary bodies at certain moments in correlation with events on Earth or cycles of events in history on Earth. So some astrologers use that in a more psychological context to look at how certain patterns correlate with certain psychological or life events for individuals. In my adolescence, I began to realize that I had a passion for astrology in a more worldly context. And then as I entered my 20s, found finance, I found that the specific worldly context I liked to look at those correlations within were financial markets.
Okay, so break all of that down, because I have to be honest, I really don't understand. Like, I just don't.
Sure.
Maybe it's because I'm not as, I don't know the word. I don't want to use creative, but because it's not the word, but I just don't understand. Like, I see your videos and I don't get it. So it's the astrology part. Yeah. Go on, how you explain.
Yeah, so at any given moment, the planets are all positioned in different ways around the Earth, in certain angles and certain combinations. And planets themselves represent certain things. And we have discovered that through millennia of writing it down when certain alignments and then certain events happen. So that there's a lot of built up data to have theses around this planet in aspect to this planet indicates this kind of an event. So with that, we can look at the moment that someone or something was born, whether that's a person or whether that is a company or that is a token, and see how the current sky is in alignment with it. Kind of like you might think of weather forecasting, but then how that applies to the geography of a given place. So that if you're looking that if you see there's going to be rain coming somewhere, you'll still take that in context with what the initial climate is, whether it rains a lot, whether rain is not very common, to put together what's happening versus the context for where it's happening, and then form an inference. So I'm seeing alignments that represent mostly either favorable or unfavorable alignments. Favorable being indicative of a price increase or good news for like a project or a token, and then unfavorable being something detrimental or something that looks more like, a bearish indicator for the market. So it's very, very similar to technical analysis, where we're using patterns to predict the future because it's all cyclical. It just happens that the chart is circular and not candlesticks. So, yeah.
So can you give me an example of what would be a good thing and what would be a bad thing? I know that could be quite broad, but just so I can really wrap my head around what you look for.
Sure. So the favorable planets are generally Jupiter and Venus. They indicate, I just like to say, cute shit. Generally Jupiter or Venus.
Fine. Yeah.
So yeah. So in middle of May, around May 16th, Jupiter in the sky will be crossing over the location that Venus was at when Bitcoin's Genesis block was released. So Jupiter's crossing the exact location of where Venus is in Bitcoin's chart. So like Jupiter plus Venus, double cute shit, essentially. So trying to simplify it down that way. Astrology is a hell of a lot of math that I don't do myself. I get calculations to do, and then I just see it, and I'm like, okay, Jupiter crossing Venus, that's favorable. Something happening around the same time is that the two planets that indicate unfavorable things or bearishness are Mars and Saturn. And Mars will be opposing Pluto, where it was in Bitcoin's chart at its time of the Genesis block, which is Mars in a direct opposition to another planet, Pluto, which can be more unfavorable, looks more bearish. So we're seeing kind of a game of combination, and then what is the last result? Because often there's going to be multiple things going on, and you have to see which are more powerful or which are outweighing the other side.
So it might sound ridiculous, because obviously you do this, so you obviously believe
Nothing sounds ridiculous.
Okay, good. That's great. Okay, so how effective is it? So like, how much? What kind of results have you had by following this system when it comes to trading? Because you trade, right?
Yeah, I do. I'm definitely in profit because of this. Preemptively, I am more geared towards, I mean, me myself being a more like skeptical or critical person, I can spot unfavorables and like, oh, that looks bad, like it's going to go down. So I'm good at being like, I want to have USDT on hand to buy in. And then there's a really striking correlation with full moons being local bottoms and new moons being local tops. There was a chart I recently retweeted.
Wait. Full moons being local bottoms.
Of a, whether it's an uptrend or a downtrend, like just local bottoms as it ebbs and flows, and new moons being local tops. So for example, if I am more short-term trading altcoins like swing trading, I will try to buy in around the full moon for things that I think have a fundamental and a technical narrative to back it. So like I use all three, where every time it's around a full moon, I'm thinking, what positions do I want to add to? What narratives are bringing the space? Right now, I'm really bullish on exchange tokens and also like NFT projects. So I'll add positions to those. Around the new moon, I'll then look and see what looks like there might be bullish divergence, a narrative dying out to where I think it looks a bit overvalued, and I'll take profit. So I use it and I'm in profit. I am not perfect. There are times when I am like, there are times where I look back, I'm like, oh my God, that was a shit. Like, why didn't you see that? So I'm definitely not infallible. Like it's human error, but it is really key for narrowing down and not being overwhelmed with the TA or fundamental analysis that can seem like I have so many different options of where to go. I can narrow it down with astrology. Yeah.
And astrology is one of those things, like so many things in life, whether it's like, bear with me, like hypnosis or alternative medicine, all these sorts of alternative things, which people laugh at and they don't believe in. Right. So, and now you're bringing this into something which is, let's just call it a man's world because it is. And this is something which men totally, oppose. Like women are more interested in astrology. Women are more interested in alternative medicine. Sure. Women are more interested in all the like fluffy stuff, let's just call it. So, so what kind of backlash have you had? Because, you're really putting this in like, you're bringing astrology into maths and science and stuff like that.
Yeah. So
what kind of backlash have you had?
This came really organically in the way that like 2020 started. I was like, I'm graduating from university. I don't know jack shit about finance. I am practical, but I wasn't taught anything. I'm a philosophy student. Like I didn't know anything about anything. I had a debit card, January 2020. I open up Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm like, no wonder in my own astrology, there's a huge emphasis on finance that I refused to acknowledge for all of my life, because I was like, I'm going to be an actor. Like, why is there money? Like, what interest do you have in being an accountant? Now I see, no, it's because you're interested in finance itself. But I started getting really into investing and diving into crypto at the March 2020 crash. And it just became like my obsession. Literally, I was like, this is when history is made. So you better like really ape into this. And it was such an honest interest in crypto and then using astrology, because that's what I know how to use to chart trends, that as it emerged and I started posting about it on TikTok as I was growing for political videos as well, I didn't even think about like, I didn't know that there were like astrologers that were already doing this, that were doing crypto and astrology. Now I'm aware of like, there are a number of financial astrologers who do crypto, but I was just kind of like, this is fun for me. And then during the fall, accounts like TikTok Investors and some other ones started posting them. And I like to say like, I just don't take too much overly seriously. Like, I don't know, like the memification of me, like calling me, thinking I'm crazy, I'm like, bring it. I don't really care. So I'd say the backlash, I find it mostly, even if they might mean it maliciously, I don't know. I don't take it maliciously. I think it's funny. I'm shattering their worldview, and that's fine. This is welcome. So definitely had a lot of backlash, either favorably or unfavorably, I guess. Like there's been some weird ones, like Ben Shapiro retweeted me, and that was kind of weird.
What did you post? What did you post to get a retweet from him?
It was a video about the election that involved financial markets really going through trouble in early 2021. And it was just a weird thing where he was like, this is better than like, what did he say? He mentioned some financial analyst group, and then and 538. Yeah, and it was a weird moment because I remember I'm just eating breakfast at the same table that I've been at my entire, early 20s, and now this is happening. So I'd say the backlash is mostly shock oriented, even if they might mean it maliciously. I don't take that much seriously, and I'm like, it's all in good fun. So feel free, keep my name in your mouth, like go for it. I'm cool, I'm chilling. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's such a great mentality. I think the thing with this space is that everybody is very set in their ways, and I've noticed that people don't necessarily like mass adoption because it kind of feels like it's a club, and it's something that we have, and
I get it.
And I can understand that, and I really can, because like having been in this space for a few years now, I do sort of feel like, when I've been telling my friends buy Bitcoin and then they don't, and then now everybody's asking, I'm sort of just like, go away, it's like I can understand. But you said that you studied philosophy and you only recently got into finance. That's amazing. So I want to hear more about that. So the crash in March 2020, that's what it was. How did you learn about crypto then? Because that was literally a year ago.
Yeah. So January 2020 is when I was like, yeah, you don't know anything. Like literally you have a debit card and you don't even like, I wasn't bad with money necessarily. I'm a responsible person. It's just not something they teach you. And I was very heavy into like, not even in philosophy. I was not into philosophy of science or logic. I openly nearly failed logic because it was so difficult for me to quantify basic things. Like the coding classes I took, which were very basic, were something that I could tell was basic, but was just not the way that I think. And so I geared more towards ethics and metaphysics and like philosophy of language and things like that. And once I started preparing to graduate, COVID started kind of creeping in, and I realized like I just had a lot more time on my hands to not have to commute to class every day, like in New York. And that led to one, joining TikTok, and two, being able to read more like for pleasure. And I really like nonfiction. So I bought Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I bought the Little Common Sense Book of Investing, which both of them convinced me buy assets, not liabilities. Good tip. And then the Little Common Sense Book of Investing taught me to buy low-cost index funds. And I thought I had solved the world. I was like, I'm going to buy low-cost index funds. I'm going to beat the market. Told all my friends, I'm like, buy low-cost index funds. Lo and behold, I opened an IRA and accidentally put the entire year maximum into Tesla, which worked out very well, but was not as I intended. I meant to buy an index fund, messed it up. That was actually the catalyst for how can this be so difficult for me to buy something, be delayed, be difficult for me to set up these accounts, accidentally make 6 IRAs, barely qualify basically for these bank accounts because I don't know. I'm like I was just graduating university. I was like, why is it so difficult for me just to open a fucking bank account? Like, this is ethically ridiculous. Like, the middleman component of this is just insane. I don't know, if something's inefficient and intolerable, like I don't stand by. I'm going to be like, why? That philosophical background of like interrogating things and finding like, I'm utilitarian. I like to maximize efficiency and pleasure and minimize harm and ridiculousness. And so when things are out of balance with that, my mind is like, what is the equation wrong? And the financial system, it was like, this is absurd. And from there, I found crypto pretty easily because philosophy student plus interest in finance was like Bitcoin, like kind of entry level libertarian financial kind of leanings was pretty immediate. I did not buy into crypto immediately because I was so interested in learning more about it. I then bought into it later in the summer, and all I did that entire year, because I don't spend that much or need that much to live on, was put everything I could into Bitcoin, everything. And from that then allowed me to have
good
more
timing.
energy to,
I just clocked.
yeah,
Good timing.
oh my God.
Good for you.
Yeah. And from there, it gave me, like, I like to consider money just a form of pure energy, of transaction, and the way that we exchange energy. And building that up throughout the year allowed me to then have more of a canvas to play with Ethereum and altcoins and things like that. So my crypto journey came from being like, I need to grow up. I should learn about finance. This is highly ridiculous, and crypto seems to be the next logical step in addressing that ridiculousness.
And I think what's interesting is you said that it was kind of the mixture of philosophy and Bitcoin, which kind of made sense. Yeah. So, okay, so what kind of philosophy? Because for me, I was in politics first. Like, I'm in love with politics. Yeah. I'm a libertarian. And so that's why the connection was just like, duh, obviously. So when you say philosophy, do you mean kind of like political philosophy, or do you mean, I guess philosophy kind of extends to that, but to what kind of philosophy really? Yeah,
the philosophy that I specialized in more looked like, I was really big into ethics, and in particular, I got really deep into utilitarianism because I have a pretty myopic mind, and so I like weighing out the utility to the point of driving myself crazy of like, what is the simplest path to this? What will maximize return? To the point where sometimes I'm so focused on maximizing return, I get no return, which happens in my financial decisions as well. I can be doing so much research on altcoins and what kind of allocation I want in a company to where the opportunity passes and it's already gone up or something. So there's pluses and minuses to being an over-analyst. But the philosophy that I think led me into, similarly libertarian leanings was looking into, actually, I did a class on political philosophy and ethics, and we read a lot of John Stuart Mill, on liberty, and reading that. And there were some points that I highly agreed with, which was kind of the ways that society molds things into usually a healthier ecosystem, but can remove the innovation that comes with nonconformism, and things like that, where I just started to think on a larger worldview of the systems that we were creating and how some of them are just cultural inertia rather than linear progress. I'm really into, I guess like every early 20s girl, I'm really into Nietzsche and On the Genealogy of Morals. That really spoke to me early in my college career because it very clearly laid out how we are not on a linear path to improvement. Maybe we are, like the market, kind of eventually going up, but there's a lot of ups and downs in different areas of the world. And I felt like the financial system was a great example of going very, very far in a certain direction with trying to help out by interfering a lot in the world, when perhaps the best solution is Occam's razor and like get everything out and let the free market world kind of correct itself. And seeing 2020 be the opposite of that, where our stock market is on stilts, I think that there's so much artificiality that it brings in ethical considerations. So my philosophy of wanting the simplest path, because that brings in the least, I guess, casualties that are just extraneous in the world, and the utilitarian path of just cut to the chase, just the simplest thing, which does not seem to be this extreme manipulation, led me very, very quickly into crypto. And I think that energetic alignment is why I've been extremely lucky with the people and the opportunities that I've been able to meet up with in the space.
And you mentioned John Stuart Mill. So I did a class on ethics when I was at university, and philosophy and all that stuff. And he's the guy that speaks about freedom of speech, right? He's the one that says, if we all just tell the truth, if we allow freedom of speech, the truth will eventually rise to the top. That's So that's like something which really kind of shaped my political leanings, and therefore Bitcoin and everything like that. Like, I think what's really interesting is all the tribalism in the space. I think I just saw today that I can't remember how to pronounce his last name, but Chamath has been deplatformed from Bitcoin 2021. I was so shocked. I wondered
what happened?
Well, because he's not big. So he's a Bitcoin OG. Like, he bought Bitcoin, in his words, when everyone else was still in their mum's basement. That's the quote. But he dabbles in other things and is interested in other coins, supposedly shit coins. So he's been deplatformed, which I thought was really interesting, because John Stuart Mills is the guy that I kind of really connected with when he said freedom of speech, and then the truth will rise to the top. I wondered if you had any thoughts on any of the tribalism.
Well, for one, that's kind of sad, because I can definitely disagree with Chamath on some things, mostly because I come from a point of, for better or for worse, a beginner's mind in the grand scheme of things, where I might have less tainting, but also a bit of naivete. So like some of the things he says, I'm like, but then I don't know. But I appreciate Chamath for the most part. So I'm sad to see that he will not be at the conference that I actually will be going to some of the lectures for, because I'm a nerd. Like, I actually want to see these things. So I was excited to see him, but alas, I think that the tribalism, and I've seen other people speak about this, is because of the ethical or the philosophical conviction that nearly everyone gets into the space with, whether that is a conviction that we should accumulate profit because that, is something that has been taken away from a lot of people that might not have access to generational wealth, which I think is an ethical motive. I don't see profit or money as bad or negative. It's simply energy. And I think there's some people who, more like me, it was the efficiency or the wrongdoing of the gatekeeping and the euphemisms that make finance seem like this old guys club, when it's really just the discussion of energy, and you can put whatever fucking word you want on it, but it's not that difficult. Like, it's not as difficult as these words make it seem. That got me into the space with an awareness of kind of the emotions that come in with it. And I think that it's a lot of people's replacement for myth or for story or narrative in their life to feel like they're working directly with a medium of value, and that their path to working with that value is justified. And I remember, I don't think I realized the gravity of what I was saying, because I can agree wholeheartedly that Bitcoin is the best store of value as digital gold out of any coin. Philosophically, completely agree. I think it will get to a point where we all want to be holding a certain amount of Bitcoin for, like, this is my safety net. I used to call myself a reformed Bitcoin maxi, because I like to leverage altcoins that will return much higher to then have a bigger safety net of Bitcoin. That does not fly, because I'm not hodling, and I'm not, I don't know, like sleeping with a ledger under my pillow of just like pure Bitcoin that I bought in like 1995, 2012, 13, I don't know. But like, I think that part of the tribalism is a replacement for a myth or a religion or community in a space that often comes out of feeling like you take issue with the communities that people are ascribing to, whether that is left, right, like members of this whatever in the world. It's a lot of factions that arise out of meaning well. And I think that if you were, like, I used to say ironically a reformed Bitcoin maxi, I didn't fully mean that, I don't have HODL in my name, in my Twitter handle, but I think that anyone who wholeheartedly is a maximalist, I think it's a little narrow-minded, because there's always a caveat, and I think it is in good fun. I invite all the different factions and groups, and I don't take it too seriously. I'm just kind of like, my faction's just like maximizing the simplest path to making the best of this space, and like I'm leverage different coins for that.
Yeah, I think you have the correct mindset. You can't take any of this too seriously. You absolutely cannot. If you take it too seriously, you're just going to be miserable. And I'm totally with you. Like, I also agree. I think Bitcoin is digital gold. It's the best store of value we've ever seen. Like Michael Saylor says, it's, the best savings technology there is. It's my safety net. It's the love of my life. It's the thing which is basically, gonna be there if all else fails. But if you can make some quick gains, I don't see why not. If, you can trade some altcoins to buy more Bitcoin. I don't get why it's that deep and why it's that emotional, but I definitely agree with you. when you say, yeah, it's not, but I definitely agree with you when you say that, people need that kind of like community. And I do think that that's where it comes from, because we see tribalism, across the board, whether it's religion, gender. Oh, have I still got you? Yeah, I think you got to click the shutter. Yeah, mine does that as well.
I'm good. Yeah, you can keep going. I'm here. I'm gonna delete the video that is taking up space, because now that I'm in Dubai, I don't have all
go
my
for it. No worries.
So
no, it's fine.
Yeah.
So whether it's tribalism in sports, whether it's tribalism with gender, politics, whatever it is, I feel like people always need some form of community to belong to, and I do think that's what it comes down to. But you made a video which I thought was really cool. It totally blew up, so congrats. And your video was about Bitcoin scarcity and how okay, how do I put this, because I want to try articulate this. Basically, you're looking at yourself as a woman going through her 20s, and you were saying, as I get older, I have less time left. That makes me more valuable. That makes my time more valuable, just like Bitcoin. I thought that was really cool. So can you tell me more about this? How did you come to that train of thought?
Yeah. In the way that I conceptualize a lot of the reasons why I'm interested in crypto, it generally does go back to like philosophy. And even if I'm, quote, in it for the tech, it's because like it's tech that I think is going to philosophically change the world. And so with that, when I think of Bitcoin, it was just really life-changing to be like, you can hold something for money that is of value, and isn't just like discovering the difference between the frivolousness or meaninglessness of fiat currency versus something that is, even though it's intangible, it's meaningful, spoke to me. And with Bitcoin increasing in value, the less that it is available, I started thinking of like how a lot of my worries for the future come with a lot of my career was leveraged on, sure, providing like valuable, insightful things, but no one would have spotted me in the first place if I wasn't, black and red haired, look the way I did, the kinds of things that come with the awareness of being like a young woman and knowing that biologically, like I'm in like the peak of being able to use this. And I'm not afraid to speak about it or be like, that's kind of a weird concept to think of, like looking back and being like, that was the height of when I was most captivating physically online. What would be a way of knowing that I would be worth taking up space and value when it's not the immediate, gut impulse to watch something because of what they look like? And if Bitcoin gets more valuable, the less that it exists in the world, because what remains is valuable. So therefore less of it is exponentially more valuable. Then why isn't me, who I would consider valuable in what I provide, also being thought of as more valuable the less of me that remains? And I don't think that's morbid. I feel really comfortable discussing death and I guess the fear or acknowledgement of the downside of aging. And I really find, especially women who just like hold their openness with aging, like I like to see like almost like beautiful aging on people, because I think it speaks to this. That if Bitcoin can be valuable as there's less of it remaining, then maybe it's not so bad for me to get old and wrinkly and just be a brain and not so much a body anymore. Maybe it means it's more valuable in the long run.
Yeah, I totally I totally understood your train of thought when you posted that. Yeah. And I was like, that's really funny that like somebody I've never spoken to is kind of like thinking like that, and I totally understood it. What was the kind of reaction you had? Because I know obviously it blew up, but like what kind of response did you get?
Funny enough, I posted it on TikTok and didn't blow up at all. Yeah, because on TikTok, what blows up is the very like clickbait 15-second joke videos. And there are times when authentically I'm in a good mood, I want to post that. And there are also most of the time when I know that I don't consume any content like that. I consume very little TikTok, maybe 1 to 2 videos when I open the app to post. But I don't sit there scrolling. And when I do look at something, it's usually a 1-minute crypto or philosophy or personal finance or real estate related video. So I don't sit there and watch any of the trends. So when that video didn't really blow up in TikTok, I wasn't surprised, because definitely now thinking in terms of value, not just views. when I posted it on Twitter and it started to blow up and I gained some followers that I really respect in the space, like some thinkers I know found me through that, it was kind of interesting to see that people could resonate, because even though I have had quite a few incredible viral opportunities, that is just the surface of the amount of like hundreds of thousands of pieces of content that don't get seen that are more valuable than that usually get seen. So sure, there were some weird things where people didn't bother to watch the video, and it doesn't bother me when people leave quote physical hate. Like, I couldn't care less. I grew up acting. This is a biological spacesuit. I don't care. Say what you want to try to make a funny point. Some people were like, this is a top signal. I'm like, that was old in October 2020. Like, I fucking been here. Like, please, thank you. No, someone else thought of that joke. And then some of them were just kind of like, this is weird that Bitcoin maxis think this. And I'm like, the Bitcoin maxis don't claim me. Yeah. So every single criticism was a misunderstanding or a projection of trying to make a joke and be witty. Exactly. Whereas 90% of it was like, wow. And I'm like, oh, like, people appreciate it. Like, to this day, anytime I get, it's inhuman to be able to consider the amount of people that might appreciate what I'm viewing. So anytime I can see and connect with that, it's like, oh, thank you. Even if I like every single time, like when people see me and I'm checking my comments, I'm like, oh, like I'm visually like in like reacting. So that's why I pinned it. And I don't usually have a pinned tweet, because I'm like, there's no point, because of how fast the space moves. But that spoke to me. And I did it in Dubai a month ago in the same hotel, like it was this floor, like 2 balconies down at night, no makeup, the night before my flight at like 2 a.m. Just filmed it. And like, it worked.
Yeah, I think, that's the best kind of content, where it just comes from the heart. It's totally random.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just comes from the heart. And I totally get it. I think it was really, really interesting.
Thank you.
So in terms of your personal life and your career goals, where do you see yourself? I know you said you're obviously moving to Dubai, but outside of that, like, where do you see yourself? What are you doing for work? What are the goals?
Yeah. So the current priority is because of where I see the world heading. And there's actually a good quote. I believe it's Jim Rogers who said something along the lines of 1800, you move to London, 1900, you move to New York, 2000s, you move to Asia. And the same energy that had me move to New York from Texas, because I felt like that go-getter energy of wanting to change the world, is the same exact energy that can see that I want to keep a place in New York. I don't want to depend or live there full time. And places in Asia like Dubai or Singapore, where the priority is on maximizing freedoms and using the government in a way that keeps sanity instead of impedes on businesses, especially because there's not a demonization of success or wealth, because it's understood that that is simply a lot of energy and that can be either acquired poorly or really authentically. I can see where that's heading. And so I'm thinking, firstly, that a career goal is to, for one, set up, businesses and things outside of the country, as I, prepare to be more in like the Asian. I see this kind of an emerging intellectual market for this kind of liberty-based work. I want to create things that are not fighting against where history is heading. And I think history is heading towards AI and decentralization. And I love astrology. And I know that I am passionate about research and what I've done so far. However, I think that the future will be AI. And that actually scared me a few years ago. There were pieces I made where I thought it was like ethically wrong. And now I've really completely gone around the corner where I'm like, if it scares me because it's new, then I want to join forces with it. There's several projects that I'm heavily invested in because I'm like, that's going to scare people and piss people off. Like, I want to be on the front lines for that. And
can you tell me more about that? What kind of AI scared you and that you've now had a change of heart on?
I think that I was honestly surrounded by and in a mind space of really wanting like humanness to not go out of style or be valued for simply being human. Like me, value us. And now I see it as the benefit to humanity can come when more and more is automated and less can be done by humans, so that what is done by humans is more valuable, because the value of our work, or the amount of energy it takes to do our work, will fill to the amount of space that we are provided. So if we live in a huge house and we're alone, that might be more detrimental to your day-to-day routine than living in a adequately but more concise space. if you give yourself 3 weeks to write a 1-page paper, it's probably going to be extremely taxing as opposed to 3 hours to write that paper. It's just going to drag out. So if we can have less to fill as humans that doesn't require, if we can outsource extraneous, monotonous tasks or tasks that can be better done by automation, it will allow us to be forced to work within a system that maximizes our potential. And astrology one-on-one consultations are beautiful. And I think that scaling that is not as sustainable as thinking I want to build a platform that can provide astrological delineations and things, not just in a cookbook style, but like more intelligent, where AI, I'm not extremely literate on the science of AI, but I do understand that, there's intelligence to it. It's not, it's not a formula like regular, maybe.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So I think that if we can outsource that and we can continue trying to build to maximize AI, which is just smarter and is going to have, I get that in astrology, there's a human compassion component with the way that you present something. And also there's error in that. You might get the calculation wrong. You might delineate it wrong. With AI, I think that there's less room for error in a lot of that. So I would in the future like to develop a system that is decentralized so that it's not like writers getting to put their favoritism or bias into what the AI is saying. But I know CoStar is already doing this to an extent. And I did a video where I railed on CoStar, and like, if I ever meet these people, like I didn't really blow up. I was a nobody until 6 months ago, but I would honestly be like, I apologize. I had a change of heart. Keep doing you, because it scares people and it pisses people off. But I can see behind that in the future, it'll be, this is what's done to further businesses. And I think decentralization is the future, because as we have more space to make day-to-day decisions, the more complex decisions reveal themselves as being silly. So like the fact that going towards bank, you have intermediaries. ACH, I just had to do to get my Polish passport that I'm getting through descent, is like 5 days to wire a couple €100. Like I was literally like, can I just send you Ethereum? They're like, what is Ethereum? I'm like, okay, thank you. And I think that decentralization is just a product of efficiency, and people with efficiency, there comes more time and space to think, and people realize when there's unnecessary steps. So I think like DeFi projects, I want to build some of my own, and I'm very aware that it's very real that there's a possibility of talented people who use me as a public figure to not create the best project, have it maybe fall through, and that's on me. So I'm extremely careful in not wanting to be as naive as I am now before launching. But I think anything that liberates people from, like, I guess allows them to be more sovereign with the way that they manage their energy, aka their money, is so necessary. So I'm very focused on astrology within AI and DeFi in general, in mostly like, I don't know, there's a bunch of DeFi projects that are like staking, yield farming, collateralization, like cross chain, like whatever. And I'm like, you lost me about the third term. How can I just help the average person in a way that leverages the geniuses that are developers, and also makes the average person more stable, because no one should be living paycheck to paycheck. I think equal opportunity is important. It's what people decide to do with that, and DeFi allows for that.
Yeah, I think so there's so much there. So I'll just pick up of your last point. So I'm also with you. Like, I'm not super techie. I'm in a world where I'm trying to essentially liaise that message from the geniuses, the techie people, to the average person who just wants to find value. So that's very much my goal as well. And I think, like, in terms of ethics, I look at the traditional financial system, and I just think it's not just trash, but it's actually a scam that is set out to hurt the little person. And so when I look at these different DeFi projects, and like, the different kind of interests that people can make, and yield farming and all this stuff, and I'm just like, wow, like this could be really interesting. You said something earlier, and I can't remember what it was, but I really wanted to pick you up on it. AI. Okay, so on the AI point, I'm with you. I definitely understand the whole outsourcing, and it means that we can make our time more valuable and purposeful. We understand that in business anyway. But I have this thing where I feel I'm concerned that if we really remove the human from the human experience, it's going to make things dark and dull. For example, so I went out for lunch back in summer in England when it was open. But because of COVID, they weren't serving you directly. And I think I went into this restaurant, I ate a full meal, and I didn't speak to one person that worked there the entire time. No waiter, no, and it just wasn't nice. And I didn't like it. And then I thought to myself, okay, well, this is where we're going with AI. And I didn't like it. I much more prefer to have the human involved. What do you think?
I think that's definitely, you could argue, a bug or a feature depending on your preference in the context, because I agree that now some of the things that seem like they will be here to stay, similar to how 9/11 enforced new restrictions for travel and gathering, this has introduced things like, especially in Dubai, where it's the cutting edge of a lot of the ways in which this was dealt with, and it got a handle on things very quickly. Like, there's very rarely menus, it's all QR codes, and something about that, like, I'm like a paper person. Like, I like to I don't know if this is weird, but like, I smell my books, and I like menus and tangible things. Heavy earth sign energy in my chart. I like to be grounded and like feel things, and that feeling, and also the rise of just, I don't even know, like calling or dealing with a problem online with customer service and it being completely automated, and then sometimes them not understanding you, does worry me in some ways. That when there's an issue, sometimes the creativity and the softness of humans can fill in gaps and misplaced parties, where if it's a system and there's a part that doesn't fit, you're just going to be kept out, so that if there's a mishap, it's more likely to be more noticeable. So I think it's a case-by-case thing, but there are some things where my motto throughout this has been, like, if I'm really bullish on AI, it makes me motivated to live a life that AI cannot replicate, and most things it can. And then one thing that it may be, like, when I think of anything, whether it's being like witty or provocative or saying things that seem cutting edge, I think an AI might do that better, because it might not have the emotional setback of, like, that's going to piss people off. It might have a faster reaction time to doing, more provocative statement or wit or whatever. So it's a case-by-case thing of trying to maximize my creativity and my individuality, and not having an answer to whether it's right or whether it is better, and personal preference in some ways, because some things I don't want to deal with the human about, and some things I'm like, I miss menus and waiters and things like that.
Yeah, I miss menus. I'm totally with you.
Yeah.
But I wonder, do you have an opinion on Elon Musk's simulation theory then, given your interest in AI? Do you think we're in a simulation?
It's kind of like the idea of free will. You can make the idea of a simulation into whatever fits your comfort zone with the kind of reality we're in. So if you literally think that we are in the one-to-one equivalent of a computer game with another species watching or playing, I don't think that. I think that you could argue that this is a playing ground for a larger architecture of the universe. I think that astrology, and the way that there's correlations that repeat over time, hints at a larger intelligence than just humans, and that's not woo. It's similar to how aliens are likely and we still have little proof. It's likely just given the way in which reality is structured, but we have little causal proof of this. And I think that the simulation theory, if you want to argue that we're in a simulation, I would want you to explain the implications of what that causally means. Like, are we agents of our own will? Are we playing for entertainment for someone? Because you could argue that life is a simulation because we all have our own reality, or you could argue that it's a simulation because, like me, you think more in terms of there must be something greater than this, not in a woo magical way, but just honestly in what I think is logical, that I'm not going to think that the human intelligence is the extent of the most intelligent thing in the universe. So similar to like free will, I'm like, whether we have it or not, we're going to act the same. But if you think it's a simulation, cool. I can't disprove it or prove it. I'm not giga-brained enough for that.
No, I get you. Well, I mean, that's pretty giga-brain response. I give you that. My kind of take on the whole simulation thing is, so I look at things very in a very basic, straightforward way. I just look at the facts and see if what I can take from it. And he says we're in a simulation, right? Got it. Okay, I understand the three things he says. Either we did it and we got there. Either something happened so catastrophic that we never were able to advance that far, or we decided it would be inhumane. But my issue, which I'd love to interview him one day, my issue, which I can't get my head around, is, but I definitely think that we're going to get there from a tech standpoint, but who says that somebody got there before us? Like we could just be like, time could just be this linear and we are the first, and then I don't know, and then we eventually get there. It kind of, that's my only issue with it, because I do definitely agree that, you know, things have advanced so far and so quickly. But you mentioned free will, so go on, I got to get your thoughts on that. Do you think we have free will?
I think that we have free choice. So I think in free will, there's two different things that we should consider. That everyone is conditioned, and you could say that based on your nurture, you do not have absolute free will to do everything outside of where you're conditioned. I don't think that conditioning counts as an impediment to free will. I think if everyone is conditioned, then let's just consider, okay, can you make your own actions without being manipulated by like an internal party? I do think that we do have free will, because I don't think that conditioning is an impediment on free will as much as a feature of it, because we live in a world where there's factors and things intermingling. You have free will amongst those things to choose. However, I also think that astrology and being able to predict the future and see cycles repeat, maybe even TA, which I call astrology TA for all of reality, cycles repeat, and we can use that to discern that there's a larger framework. So I believe that everything is completely and wholly determined. I think that if you're saying that there's some things that are determined and some things that aren't, that you're just scared to say that it's all determined because you think that that means that you aren't making your own decisions, I would argue that we're completely making our own decisions, and that if we were omnisciently at the end of the timeline, we would be able to see how we make all of those decisions. So we are both the agents of our own life, and we are playing a life that has been predetermined, because I think that the most logical conception of this, and this is really wacko and weird, and I've written a lot of papers on this and I've gotten a lot of mixed opinions, whether it's like insane or kind of makes sense, is that we're experiencing time linearly when it must be a completely larger system that is so many dimensions, and we have to simplify it down into this follows this follows this. I don't believe in causality. I believe in like a chain of interactions, and everything is happening. We're experiencing it linearly. So we both have the free will to create our own lives. But if we were not humans, we were gods being able to see the entire timeline, we would see everything we're about to do, even if we're the ones doing it. So like, you are writing your own story and living it out at the same time. Yeah.
Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, no, it's good. It's good. I often wonder, I also agree. I think that we're living time linearly, but I don't think that that's how it actually is. I do think it's like a bubble that if we were gods or on a higher level or whatever, we would be able to see. I even have this idea about reincarnation, whereby say you have like this bubble, right? So time isn't linear, it's just this bubble. I think that you can exist simultaneously in different eras and times, even while you're still alive. I genuinely think that's possible, because time isn't linear. So like, if I, let's say, God forbid, I died tomorrow, I could easily be brought back 3 weeks in advance. Let's say I'm the new baby that's born at the same time as me being alive, because time's not linear. So I have this whole theory about reincarnation, which I definitely think is true. Like, I definitely think you could meet yourself, because time isn't linear. Does that make sense?
There's some weird ways that could work. When I was in a couple metaphysics courses at NYU, I got really deep into time travel, because there's arguments about how
love time travel.
There's legitimate arguments for why or why not it's logically possible, and why or why not it's physically possible. Like, there are two different arguments. The physical possibility can almost be explained easier than the logical one, the logical one can almost be explained easier, but the physical one can be an issue, because like, if you're meeting yourself, then parents and descendancy and things like that, and like messing up the timeline, and how Harry Potter, where Harry meets himself, is a good example of something that is not logically consistent. Basically, if someone wants to Google that, they can look into it, where Harry meets himself across with his Patronus in like the 6th film, I think. I think that there's a lot you can do with time travel where it's like a highly discussed academic topic. Like, it's not taboo. I tend to think it will likely be possible, and that we could really mess up. We can mess up a lot if it goes wrong. So it's very exciting. I'm excited to probably look down maybe in my next life or a next planet and be like, Earth fucking everything up, because they time traveled back and messed up a birth. Yeah.
Well, time travel forward is possible. It's time travel backwards, because if you're like I'm obsessed with time travel.
Right.
Interstellar is my favorite film. So if you're moving faster than the speed of light, or like if you're, let's say you remove yourself, because obviously time is not fixed. It depends on like mass and gravity. So if you go to another planet with like a larger mass, then time will obviously move slower for you. So then if you then come back to Earth, everybody's aged, but you're still the same. So time travel forward we get, but I have no idea how time travel back would work. I don't know if you know how that go on.
Some of the time travel back it would involve having to go back to a specific event, and then there's some weird theories. Like you would kill yourself.
But how do you get back? But how do you get back?
That's the thing, is that the physical part is often theorized, where like where it's not clear how you would physically do it, but it logically makes sense. That's why like the logical thing is like where physically, you can make something up. And there's a lot of issues of like double space, where if you're time traveling somewhere, would you run into an object there and then not exist? So there's like issues of like, you want to make sure that your time travel box is like in a field. It's really cool. There's some cool, if anyone wants those resources, I can pull out my old textbooks and like tell you the articles and things. But yeah, no, it's a great topic. It's been so brilliant chatting to you. I feel like we have so much in common. I'd love to come to Dubai when you're settled. I feel like we could talk for hours over a drink and just like talk about absolute rubbish. I'm sure we could. But where can people find you? What are you up to? Just plug yourself now. I am Maren Altman on all socials. So that's mostly TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Can't think of anything else I'm on. So if it's me like scamming or asking you for money, it's not me. People fall for this every video. They're like, thank you for sharing this Telegram group where I'm like, pay me. And I'm like, that's not me. So watch out for scammers. But Maren Altman, pretty simple, all platforms. And I recently started a second YouTube channel. So you can find both of those in my links to separate astrology and then astro and crypto. You can subscribe to both if you still want to see everything in your feed, but I was getting some feedback of like, I don't really want this. So I split it up like 3 days ago. So that's out. But Maren Altman, everywhere you can find me, pretty simple. And yeah, feel free to leave anything. I like to see what people leave, the good, the bad, the ugly. So chime in.
I love it. Maren, thank you so much. It's been so brilliant. And we definitely need to meet somewhere in the world. We'll do it.
Yes, 100%. Would love to bring you on my show and chat because I think we're, very, very similar.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, thank you so much for watching. Awesome. I will see you all next week. Bye-bye.